Picture a windswept Wyoming dusk in 1884, where Mary Sullivan, a 22-year-old Kansas orphan, clutched a tattered bag, stepping off a train into a town that whispered warnings. She came for John Red Bear, a Comanche leader promising a simple life, but his shadowed eyes hid a fortune built on blood. The name Charlotte, his vanished bride, haunted every glance from strangers. Would Mary uncover a love worth fighting for, or a secret that could bury her? This story's ending has left millions breathless. Justice, betrayal, and a choice that reshaped a territory. Hit subscribe, share your city in the comments, and stay to unravel the truth behind that fateful night. What did Mary find in the ashes of a burned homestead? The train screeched to a halt, its iron wheels spitting sparks into the Wyoming dusk of 1884. Mary Sullivan, 22, gripped her threadbare canvas bag, the sum of her life's possessions: 2 faded dresses, a dog-eared Bible, and a crumpled letter from John Red Bear. Kansas was a memory of dust and hunger, a place where hope withered like unwatered crops. She'd answered his ad in a frontier gazette, drawn by its stark promise. Comanche leader seeks wife of good character. Simple life, honorable. Write to John Red Bear, Laramie. Simple, honorable. Those words had burned in her chest, a lifeline out of despair. She stepped onto the Laramie platform, her boots crunching gravel, the air sharp with the scent of sagebrush and coal smoke. The town sprawled before her, saloons with swinging doors, a mercantile stacked with barrels, and faces weathered by sun and suspicion. Eyes followed her, not curious but heavy, like they were measuring a ghost. A woman in a calico dress froze mid-step, whispering to a man with a tobacco-stained beard. Mary caught the name Charlotte before their voices dropped. Her pulse quickened. Who was Charlotte? Why did the air feel like it held secrets too big for this wide-open plain? Mary Sullivan? The voice was low, rough as gravel. She turned to face John Red Bear, and her breath caught. He stood tall, a silhouette against the fading sun, his long black hair tied back, eyes sharp as a hawk's. His deerskin jacket hung loose over broad shoulders, but his boots were scuffed, his hands calloused. Power clung to him, not loud, but undeniable, like a storm brewing on the horizon. "That's me," Mary said, steadying her voice despite the knot in her gut. He nodded. No smile, no warmth. "Wagon's this way." His gaze flicked over her bag, her mended dress, as if sizing up her worth. She followed him through the crowd, their stares prickling her skin. A man outside a saloon spat into the dirt, muttering something to his companion. Another whisper of "Charlotte" slithered past. Mary's fingers tightened on her bag. "Folks here always this friendly?" she asked, half joking to break the tension. John didn't look back. "They talk too much. Ignore 'em." His tone was final, a door slammed shut. Mary bit her lip, questions piling up like storm clouds. The wagon waited behind the livery stable, a sturdy rig with 2 horses, their coats gleaming despite the dust. John tossed her bag into the back and offered a hand. She hesitated, then climbed up herself, her pride sharper than her fear. The road stretched north, cutting through rolling grasslands that shimmered gold in the twilight. Mountains loomed in the distance, their peaks jagged against a bruised sky. The silence between them was thick, broken only by the creak of the wagon and the rhythmic thud of hooves. Mary stole glances at John, his profile carved like stone, unreadable. "Your letter said you're a Comanche leader," she ventured. "What's that mean out here?" "Means I take care of my people," he said, eyes fixed on the road. "Land, livestock, whatever it takes to keep us strong." His words were clipped, but there was weight behind them, a hint of something fierce and guarded. She waited for more, but he offered nothing, his hands tight on the reins. The wagon crested a hill, and Mary's breath hitched. Below sprawled a sprawling estate, not the humble lodge she'd pictured. A grand house of timber and stone rose from the plain, its windows glowing like embers. Barns, corrals, and outbuildings dotted the land, surrounded by endless fields and grazing cattle. In the distance, a silver mine glinted under the last rays of the sun, its machinery stark against the wild. This wasn't a homestead. It was a kingdom. "You didn't say you were rich," Mary said, her voice sharp with accusation. She turned to John, searching his face for answers. He kept his eyes forward, jaw tight. "Didn't want the wrong kind of woman," he said. "Wealth draws trouble. I need someone who wants the life, not the money." Her stomach twisted. The ad had promised simplicity, honor. But this was something else. The whispers of Charlotte echoed in her mind, louder now, like a warning carved in the wind. "Who's Charlotte?" she asked, the question slipping out before she could stop it. John's hands froze on the reins just for a second. "Nobody you need to know," he said, his voice colder than the evening air. "Town gossip." Let it be. But his eyes flickered, and Mary saw it. A crack in his armor, a shadow of something hidden. The wagon rolled toward the glowing house, and Mary's heart pounded. She'd come to Wyoming for a new start. Now, she wondered if she'd walked into a trap. As the wagon rolled closer to the glowing estate, Mary Sullivan felt the weight of unseen eyes, as if the Wyoming night itself were watching. The name Charlotte lingered in her mind, sharp as a spur, urging her to uncover what John Redbear was hiding behind his stoic mask. The dining hall of the Redbear estate was a clash of worlds. Woven Comanche tapestries hung beside polished silver candelabras, their flames flickering like uneasy spirits. Mary sat across from John, her simple dress stark against the carved oak table. The air smelled of roasted venison and wood smoke, but the silence between them was heavier than the meal. Singing Bird, a wiry Comanche woman with silver-streaked braids, served stew with hands steady but eyes wary. She moved like someone who'd seen too much, her gaze darting to Mary, then away, quick as a deer sensing danger. "You'll meet the others tomorrow," John said, cutting his meat with deliberate precision. "My kin, workers, some of the band. They'll expect a strong woman." His tone was matter-of-fact, but Mary caught the challenge in it, as if her worth were a horse to be broken and tested. "I'm no stranger to hard work," she replied, meeting his hawk-like stare. "Kansas winters taught me that." She wanted to ask about Charlotte, about the whispers, but Singing Bird's subtle shake of the head stopped her. The woman's eyes screamed caution, and Mary swallowed her questions, the stew suddenly tasteless. That night, sleep eluded her. The guest room was too grand. Velvet curtains, a bed wide as a prairie, a hearth spitting embers like restless ghosts. She lit a candle, its glow dancing across the walls, and paced the pine floorboards. A creak beneath her foot halted her. Kneeling, she pried up a loose board, heart hammering. Beneath it lay a silk ribbon, faded, but knotted tight around a scrap of paper. In hurried script, it read, "He lies. The mines aren't his." The initial C was scrawled at the bottom. Mary's blood ran cold. Charlotte. This was no gossip. It was a warning. Dawn broke gray and sharp, the estate humming with life. Mary slipped the note into her pocket and ventured outside. The ribbon clutched like a talisman. The corrals buzzed with ranch hands. Some Comanche, their faces guarded. Others white, their drawls thick with frontier grit. She overheard two men by the barn, their voices low but careless. "Stone's back tonight," one muttered, spitting tobacco. "Wants more silver out of the East Ridge." The name hit Mary like a hoof to the chest. Garrett Stone, the man she'd heard John arguing with on the road. She found Singing Bird chopping sagebrush near the kitchen, her knife flashing with purpose. "Who's Garrett Stone?" Mary asked, keeping her voice low. The older woman's hand stilled, her eyes narrowing like a storm cloud over the plains. "You don't ask that name here," Singing Bird hissed. "Not unless you want trouble bigger than you can carry." But Mary pressed, the note burning in her pocket. Charlotte asked questions, didn't she? And now she's gone. Singing Bird's face tightened, her knife slicing through sage with a snap. Charlotte was a fool. Thought she could change things. This land don't bend to dreams. She paused, then whispered, "Stone buys what John takes. They're two sides of the same bad coin." Before Mary could dig deeper, a shadow fell across them. John stood there, his presence like a cold wind. "You're up early," he said, his tone too calm, his eyes flicking to Singing Bird. "Helping with chores already?" The question was a blade, testing her. "Just learning the place," Mary said, her voice steady despite the pulse in her throat. Singing Bird resumed chopping, silent as stone. John nodded, but his gaze lingered, sharp enough to cut through lies. That evening, Mary trailed the lantern-lit path to the stables, drawn by the clink of metal and muffled voices. Hidden in the shadows, she saw John with a man in a tailored coat. Garrett Stone, his smile slick as oil. "The Arapaho are restless," Stone said, handing John a leather pouch. "Push harder, or they'll come for the mines." John pocketed the pouch, his jaw tight. "They won't. Not if I hold the ridge." Mary's breath caught. The mines. Charlotte's note. She backed away, her boot snapping a twig. John's head snapped up, his eyes piercing the darkness. "Who's there?" he called, hand on the knife at his belt. Heart pounding, Mary melted into the night, the ribbon clenched in her fist. Charlotte had known something worth dying for. And now, Mary was treading the same dangerous path, with John's shadow looming closer than the Wyoming stars. Mary Sullivan slipped back to the Red Bear estate, under a Wyoming sky thick with stars, her heart racing from the near miss at the stables. The silk ribbon and Charlotte's cryptic note. He lies. The mines aren't his, burned in her pocket, a secret heavier than the night's chill. She'd seen John Red Bear's deal with Garrett Stone, heard their talk of pushing the Arapaho off the ridge. Whatever Charlotte had uncovered, it was tied to those mines, and Mary knew she was walking a razor's edge. Dawn painted the grasslands gold, but the estate felt colder, its grandeur masking something rotten. Mary kept the note hidden, her resolve hardening like iron in a forge. She needed answers, not whispers. Slipping into Laramie at midday, she avoided the prying eyes of townsfolk and headed for the Rusty Spur, a saloon where dust and whiskey clung to the air like a second skin. The barkeep, a grizzled man with a scar across his cheek, pointed her to Old Tom, a half-drunk miner slumped in a corner, his hands trembling around a tin cup. "You knew Charlotte?" Mary asked, sliding onto a stool. Tom's bloodshot eyes narrowed, then softened, as if her name conjured a ghost. "Aye," he rasped. "Pretty thing, sharp as a tack. Wasn't no bride, though. Came from Chicago, pokin' into Red Bear's business. Said she was writin' for some paper, but I reckon she was after more than a story." Mary leaned closer, the saloon's din fading. "What did she find?" Tom took a swig, his voice dropping. "Red Bear's mines, built on lies. He didn't just buy land. He burned homes, poisoned wells, and sent men to scare off Arapaho and Cheyenne. Even his own Comanche kin got pushed out if they crossed him. Charlotte had papers, letters, deeds, proving he paid thugs to do the dirty work. She was gonna send 'em to the law." Her pulse quickened. "What happened to her?" Tom's face darkened. "She told Red Bear she'd expose him. The next day, gone. They said she ran off, but..." He tapped his temple. "I saw a body in Dead Man's Canyon, spring of '81. Woman's dress, bones scattered. No one dared touch it. Red Bear's got the sheriff in his pocket. Mary's stomach churned. Charlotte hadn't fled. She'd been silenced. The ribbon in her pocket felt like a brand. "Where are those papers now?" she pressed. Tom shook his head. "Dunno. She hid 'em, maybe at the estate. Red Bear tore the place apart looking, never found 'em." He drained his cup. "Watch yourself, girl. You're stirring the same hornet's nest." Back at the estate, Mary's mind raced. She needed those papers, but every step felt like crossing a rattlesnake's path. As she passed the kitchen, Singing Bird caught her arm, her grip like iron. "You went to town," the woman whispered, eyes fierce. "You're playing with fire." Mary hesitated, then showed her the ribbon. Singing Bird's breath hitched. Charlotte's. She wore it in her hair. "Help me find what she hid," Mary urged. Singing Bird shook her head. "I got kin here. Red Bear will kill him if I cross him." But her eyes betrayed a flicker of defiance, a spark Mary clung to. If you're gripped by this tale of secrets and courage, hit that subscribe button. It keeps stories like Mary's alive. Share where you're listening from, and let's ride this trail together. That night, Mary waited until the house slept, then crept to John's study, a room of maps and ledgers reeking of tobacco and power. She rifled through drawers, her candle casting jagged shadows. A locked box under the desk caught her eye, but before she could pry it open, boots thudded outside. She doused the flame, heart pounding, and ducked behind a curtain. John entered, his silhouette filling the doorway, a lantern swinging in his hand. He paused, sniffing the air like a wolf, then moved to the box, unlocking it with a key from his belt. Papers rustled, but Mary couldn't see them. He locked it again and left, his steps fading into the night. She emerged, trembling but undeterred. The box held answers. She was sure of it. But confronting John was a gamble with her life. At dawn, she found him by the corral, his face unreadable. "You're quiet today," he said, tightening a saddle. "Something on your mind?" Her throat tightened, Charlotte's ribbon heavy in her pocket. "Just wondering about this place," she said, voice steady. "How do you build all this?" His eyes narrowed, a storm brewing. "Hard work, sacrifice. You wouldn't understand." But his hand lingered on his knife, and Mary knew. Charlotte had asked the wrong questions, and now she was next. John Red Bear's hand rested on his knife, his eyes boring into Mary Sullivan, like a Wyoming wind cutting through sagebrush. She'd asked about his empire's roots, and his guarded reply, hard work. Sacrifice, hung in the air, a warning as sharp as the blade at his belt. Mary forced a nod, her heart pounding, and turned away, Charlotte's ribbon a secret weight in her pocket. She was treading on graves, and John knew it. The estate's sprawling grounds felt like a cage as dusk settled, the horizon bleeding red over the Laramie plains. Mary slipped into the kitchen, where the scent of cornbread lingered, and found Singing Bird alone, grinding maize with a stone pestle. The older woman's eyes flicked up, wary but resolute. "You're still here," she said, her voice low. "Thought you'd run after last night." "I'm done running," Mary replied, her Kansas grit surfacing. "Charlotte didn't run, and look where it got her. I need help, Singing Bird. Those papers in John's study, they're the key to stopping him." The Comanche woman's hand stilled, her face a map of hard years. "You don't know what you're asking. My nephew works in the mines. If John smells betrayal, he'll bury us all." Mary leaned closer, the ribbon clenched in her fist. "Then we don't let him smell it. There are others out there, tribes he's crossed. They'll listen, won't they?" Singing Bird's gaze softened, a spark of defiance breaking through. "Arapaho, Cheyenne, some of our own. They meet in secret, out by Black Rock. But you go there, you're one of us. No turning back. That night, Mary waited until the estate slept, the house creaking under the weight of its secrets. She stole a horse from the stables, its hooves muffled by the soft earth, and rode hard under a sickle moon. Black Rock loomed like a sentinel against the star-streaked sky, its shadow hiding a circle of figures, warriors and elders from the Arapaho, Cheyenne, and dissident Comanche. Their faces, lit by a low fire, were etched with anger and loss. An Arapaho elder, Gray Wolf, spoke first, his voice rough as gravel. "You're Red Bear's woman. Why should we trust you?" "I'm no one's woman," Mary said, standing tall. "I found proof. John's papers. His deals with Garrett Stone. He's stealing your land, burning your homes, just like he did to Charlotte when she got too close." She held up the ribbon, its faded silk catching the firelight. Murmurs rippled through the group. A Cheyenne woman, Swift Deer, stepped forward, her braids swinging. "Charlotte came to us once, said she'd fight for our rights. Then she was gone. You expect us to believe you're different?" "I expect you to want justice," Mary countered. "Help me get those papers, and we'll drag John's lies into the open." Gray Wolf studied her, then nodded. "Tomorrow night, we raid the study. But if you betray us, Kansas girl, this land will drink your blood." The plan was set, but dawn brought trouble. John summoned Mary to the corral, his demeanor colder than the morning frost. "You were out last night," he said, tightening a bridle with deliberate slowness. The horse was sweaty, the saddle was misplaced, her mouth went dry, but she held his gaze. "Couldn't sleep. Took a ride to clear my head." His eyes narrowed, a predator scenting weakness. "Don't wander too far, Mary. This country's dangerous for a woman alone." He turned away, but two of his men lingered nearby, watching her, like hawks circling prey. Singing Bird was gone, banished to the mines for disloyalty, her absence a knife in Mary's gut. The raid was hours away, but John's suspicion was a noose tightening. She was trapped, her allies scattered, and the papers, her only hope, locked in a study she couldn't reach. As night fell, Mary hid in the hayloft, her breath shallow. Below, John's men patrolled, their lanterns casting jagged shadows. The Black Rock Coalition was coming, but if they were caught, it'd be a bloodbath. She clutched Charlotte's ribbon, its warning echoing. He lies. Mary had one chance to outsmart a man who'd buried his sins in the Wyoming dirt. If she failed, her bones would join Charlotte's in some forgotten canyon, and John's empire would stand unbroken. The hayloft's shadows clung to Mary Sullivan like a shroud, her fate hanging on the Black Rock Coalition's raid. If they failed, her bones would join Charlotte's in some Wyoming canyon, and John Red Bear's empire would stand unbroken. Below, lanterns bobbed as his men patrolled, their voices sharp with suspicion. Mary's fingers tightened on Charlotte's ribbon, its faded silk a lifeline to courage. The night was a coiled rattler, ready to strike. A faint hoofbeat broke the silence, distant but steady, cutting through the sage-scented air. Mary peered through a crack in the loft, her pulse racing. Dark figures moved beyond the corral, Gray Wolf, Swift Deer, and the others, their silhouettes blending with the moonless plain. The raid was on, but John's men were too close, their rifles glinting like fangs. She had to act. Slipping down the ladder, she grabbed a pitchfork and crept toward the stables, where a lantern hung unguarded. With a quick jab, she knocked it into the hay, flames licking up fast. "Fire!" she shouted, voice raw, drawing the guards' attention as chaos erupted. The coalition seized the moment, stealing into the house while smoke billowed. Mary ran toward the study, her boots pounding dirt, the ribbon tucked in her sleeve. Inside, Gray Wolf and Swift Deer were already at work, prying open John's locked box. Papers spilled out. Deeds, contracts, and ledgers, their ink damning John's crimes. Payments for burned Arapaho lodges, bribes to silence Cheyenne elders, orders to kill Charlotte when she threatened to expose him. "This is it," Mary whispered, stuffing the documents into a sack. But a shout from the hall froze them. John's voice, barking orders. "Find her!" he roared, his shadow looming as he stormed toward the study. Grey Wolf drew a knife, but Mary grabbed his arm. "No blood. Not yet." They slipped through a side door, the papers heavy in her hands, and fled to the kitchen, where Singing Bird waited, her banishment a ruse to aid the plan. "Go to Laramie," she hissed, pressing a revolver into Mary's hand. "The town's square now. They'll listen if you make 'em." The ride to Laramie was a blur of hoofbeats and dust, the coalition flanking Mary under a sky spitting dawn's first light. The town square buzzed with early risers, traders, miners, and women hauling water. Mary climbed onto a wagon, her voice cutting through the morning chill. "John Redbear's a liar," she shouted, holding up the papers. "He stole your land, burned your homes, and killed a woman named Charlotte for daring to speak. Here's the proof." She scattered the documents, their pages fluttering like ash. Murmurs grew to roars as townsfolk read the truth: names, dates, blood money. John rode in, his warriors at his back, his face a mask of fury. "She's a stranger," he bellowed, reining his horse. "A Kansas girl spinning tales to tear us down. I protected my people from white greed." His words swayed some, but Swift Deer stepped forward, her voice clear as a bell. "You betrayed us, Red Bear. You sold our kin's land to Garrett Stone for silver." The crowd turned, their anger shifting like a stampede. Garrett Stone, lurking at the square's edge, tried to slip away, but miners blocked his path, their fists clenched. John's hand went to his knife, eyes locked on Mary. "You should have stayed quiet," he snarled, lunging. Grey Wolf tackled him, pinning him to the dirt as the sheriff, a wiry man with a star on his vest, pushed through. "Enough!" he barked, cuffs snapping on John's wrists. "You're done, Red Bear!" Stone was seized too, his protests drowned by the crowd's jeers. By noon, John sat in Laramie's jail, his empire crumbling like dry clay. The papers sparked an inquiry, and federal marshals arrived to seize the mines. Mary stood with Singing Bird, watching the town buzz with newfound resolve. The coalition reclaimed stolen lands, their lodges rising again on the plains. Charlotte's truth, buried in a canyon, had torn down a tyrant. Months later, Mary walked the grasslands, now dotted with Arapaho and Cheyenne camps. The Red Bear estate was a community hub, its halls alive with children learning their tongues. She'd come to Wyoming for a husband, but found a fight worth winning. Under the wide sky, she was no man's bride, just Mary Sullivan, a woman who'd carved justice from the wild. What did you think of Mary Sullivan's journey from a hopeful bride to a champion of justice? Would you have faced John Red Bear's secrets or walked away? Drop your thoughts and city in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. Gratitude to you all for riding this Wyoming trail with me. Your support keeps these stories alive. Join me next time for another tale of courage and truth in the Wild West. If you're eager for more, let me know what frontier story you want to hear next.